Howdy, howdy. This is George Brunman with RestoreLiberty.us, and we're here with Bernie Moreno for our podcast today. Bernie, welcome, and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me, George. I appreciate it.
So we're in the midst of a lot of stuff. We're going to try and get through the local issues in the state of Ohio first, and then we have to talk a little bit about the nation. So, Bernie, you're a candidate for U.S. Senate. Never been in politics before?
Never been on a ballot, never held public office. George, as you know, I've been a business guy my whole life. I started with one tiny car dealership in Cleveland that I was able to buy with every cent I had in my life. I took that one dealership, grew it to a network of 15 dealerships, selling 30 brands, about 20,000 cars a year. Most of the dealerships were here in Ohio. And then, of course, did the natural thing, which is to start a technology company. And what we did is we use blockchain to make the car titling process digital. For your listeners that are in Kentucky, we're about to launch there. We've been in West Virginia, we're in New Jersey, we're going over to a few other states. Now, I have actually sold all of my operating businesses. I believe that when you go to Washington, D.C., you should be free of all conflicts, no individual stocks, no businesses. You've got to know that when I take a vote, I'm voting because it's the right thing for Ohio and for the country. And that's something that's good for me.
That is a refreshing point of view. I can't say how many times I've been upset with, career politicians that have never made payroll, seem to think that, you have this endless checkbook and you never have to balance it. Your background is just tailor-made for where we sit with a $33 trillion deficit and growing. I just think that's an amazing approach to it. And I really look forward to getting you in there and seeing if we can get something moving forward on that topic. But hey, let's get started with what's going on in Ohio. Ohio right now is the battleground for the liberal agenda. On November's ballot, we have two issues. The first is supposedly an abortion amendment to legalize abortion, and the second is to legalize cannabis, marijuana. So the first question I had is, what is your view on the fact that these issues that are on the ballot, so go straight to the voters, they don't go through any of the normal legislative process? It's like an end around that allows an outside group to write the law, pay for the voters, and pass the law without ever involving any check and balance. It just seems like we're doing this, totally backwards.
Yeah, you're right. And as you know, issue one that we had in August failed. It was supposed to raise the threshold to a majority from a simple majority, certainly not a super majority. But unfortunately, that effort was wrought with a lot of problems, messaging issues. Quite frankly, I'm just going to be blunt, say the Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, really screwed that up. And we lost. We lost by a lot. We lost by 14 points. And the reality is not only do I blame him for the failure in August, but I also blame him for when he was a state senator or Matt Dolan was in the state Senate. Why didn't they, George, put this on the ballot years ago, when it was just a good government measure done through a normal election cycle in November? It wouldn't have needed a special election. That's what we should have done. And had we done that, again, years ago, the threshold would have been 60%, and we wouldn't see this onslaught of liberal ideas that are going to make it into our Constitution.
Well, and we have so many amendments. I don't know how you can call it a constitution anymore. It's like the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's so many amendments now. But the real issue is, since there's no check and balance, whatever they write that they can get past Yost as the Attorney General, that becomes the law of the land. And with issue one, that is the most troublesome thing. So if they had just written a simple, okay, we're going to allow early abortions, no late-term abortions, no second trimester, we're going to keep the heartbeat bill, which is the law of the land in Ohio for now. But instead, the issue one that's on the ballot, if you go and look at the language, is about the most vague document I've ever read. I mean, the holes in this document are big enough to back a semi through. I mean, they're just enormous. So that it becomes all inclusive because the language is so vague. They don't define anything. So if it's an abortion amendment, why is the word woman nowhere in it? Nowhere. Yeah. It's just pregnant individual. And, the whole idea of, early versus late term versus, according to this law, you would be able to have an abortion up to the minute of birth. if it's for a health reason, and of course they don't define what a health reason is. It's financial health, physical health, mental health. It's literally anything they can come up with because it's not defined. Is there any way that this is not what it seems to be? Meaning it looks like it's all inclusive. It's not abortion, it's reproductive health. And of course, they never defined that. So that's where we think things like gender transition and hormone therapy for kids, all of that's in there because it's never stated. I mean, is this something that, how do we attack such a vague document?
Yeah, so let me just say, just 10 seconds back on the previous question, we have to remind everybody who's not listening to this, because your viewers are very informed, we are a representative democracy. We're not a straight democracy, right? So laws are written by the people that we hire to represent us in Columbus and Washington, D.C. If we don't like what they're doing, we get to replace them. But straight democracy is not what America is. So it's just really important. I know you know that, and your listeners know that, but let's remind those who are less informed about that. In terms of issue one, George, I would say, as I say to my friends, I would say to you and your listeners, we're going to say to people is don't take our word for it. You laid it out, by the way, perfectly, but don't take your word for it, my word for it. Go to seethelanguage.com where you have the exact ballot language and then it lays it out perfectly. Here's why each word was carefully chosen. These weren't arbitrary words placed in a certain way for no reason. This is about on-demand abortion, a late-term abortion, stripping parental rights, opening the door to transgender surgeries, transgender mutilation of children. We have to make that case to say, don't listen to us. Read the
it.
language yourself. And if people read the language ahead of time, early voting's already started. But before Election Day, read that language and go to the ballot as an informed citizen. Once this is in our Constitution, it's going to be virtually impossible to take it out. And even if you, or not you, George, but you listening, or a friend of yours may be pro-choice, this is not Roe versus Wade. This is not safe, legal, and rare. This is late-term abortions. This is my daughter who's due in 4 weeks, being able to have an abortion today. And what does that mean? It means snapping that baby's neck, putting scissors through their skull to kill them, and having that baby come out, a fully formed human being. That's what issue one is about. Make no mistakes about it. As a dad of 2 girls, it's about having that girl be able to be raped and having the rapist force her to have an abortion, all without your consent as a minor. That is insane. It is not representative of Ohio values. We absolutely have to make it clear that this ballot initiative has to be defeated, and we have to vote no in November.
Yeah, and I think I just want to hit again on what you just said. I mean, the key aspects are there's no discussion of age. It's just individual. There's no discussion of parent. In fact, if you read the language and think like the lawyers behind it are thinking, anyone can encourage your daughter to have an abortion, but you are not allowed to know. And if you do know, you're not allowed to discourage it because you're interfering with her decision. So, I mean, I don't know how pregnancy centers exist. All these helps that are out there to try and, encourage women to have the baby, even if you put it up for adoption, don't kill it. I mean, all of that stuff's going to be taken away by this. I mean, you're not even allowed to help someone keep the baby. I just think that's extreme. The other thing that's frightening to think about the company we're keeping, if Ohio passes this, we join North Korea and China as the only places on planet Earth where you can have an abortion that late. And it's just not who we are. I just think we need to hammer that home.
Absolutely. And George, just know that as your United States Senator, I will be advocating for 3 things. Under no circumstances should ever we have federal funding for abortions. Number 2, states can be more restrictive. And number 3, to have a 15-week national floor with common sense restrictions after 15 weeks. Because what that does is it prevents these organizations from going out to dozens more states and trying to pass this kind of law. George, this is crystal clear. These words were written by pro-abortionist industry lawyers that know that every word has a legal context, and you are going to see unleashing holy hell around abortion industry thriving in Ohio. This is not about women's choices. This is about a pro-abortion, very profitable business that will be murdering children for profit. That's what this is about. It's not about a woman's choice. That's why we need that 15-week floor and why we need to defeat issue 1.
I agree. Thank you so much. We'll be back in a minute to talk about issue 2 and what we can do to try and help get the news out there. We'll be back in a minute. If you need details, you can go to restoreliberty.us. There's a donate button there, and there's the link to all of the podcasts and information. So please check us out. Thanks.